Step into the Incense and Whiskey sanctuary with mindfulness enthusiasts and verified whiskey lovers, Mecca and Ashley, as they discuss all the random topics they love, from mindfulness to memes. This is Ashley.
And this is Mecca.
Welcome to the Incense and Whiskey sanctuary.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Mecca. I'm excited.
You excited today? Okay. Today, I just kind of wanted to I know it's been kind of trending, and it's been trending since, early or mid-June, something like that. But I really have a lot of questions around this Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith, August entanglement.
The entanglement.
The entanglement. Maybe that's what it's called, the entanglement.
The entanglement.
And not necessarily specifically about them. We can cover that, but I just kind of wanted to ask a bunch of questions. Ashley is married of us too, and I wanted to just kind of get some clarity around relationships, married relationships, because I feel like there's several types of marriages. And I say that because love is not always the key factor in all marriages, in my opinion.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
So just kind of talking around that. And it doesn't mean that we are endorsing one way of living and then another. It's just an open discussion. It's open in grace. And that's kind of what I wanted to chat about. I have my cocktail here.
All right. We got to have drinks to talk about marriage. I like it. Setting it up for the people. All right.
For the people. Okay.
Yes.
So we found out in June that there had been some type of involvement between Jada Pinkett Smith and artist August Ostina. Mm-hmm. And so he went on Angela Yee and kind of discussed his pain in life, love, and she asked specifically about the relationship that had been swirling around in the news about Jada and August. He touched on it in regards to talking about they were in a relationship. He loved her. He had never loved anyone else like that. If he could die that day because he had experienced love. He also indicated that Will Smith had given his permission, and he felt deeply hurt afterwards because they're no longer in a relationship anymore. But he did touch on it. He was asked the question and he answered it. So then Will and Smith went on the Red Table Talk and kind of gave their side of the story. So that's just kind of setting up the basis of what we are discussing today.
Yeah.
So first, Ashley, what was your thoughts about, I just kind of gave a little background. I'm sure our listeners have heard what happened, but what was your take on the Red Table Talk?
On the Red Table Talk, generally, I think my takeaway from it was that on a certain level, Jada and August connected at a time when both of them were going through processing emotional trauma. And I'm not sure to what extent that brought them together, but I do recognize in some partnerships and relationships, shared trauma, whether that be loss, grief, something of that nature, abandonment, can bring two people together. And so that was one of the takeaways for me, is that Jada saw something in August and vice versa that made her feel compelled to pursue a deep emotional connection, a romantic connection with him.
Because at first she did indicate that he had come to her for healing.
Yes, right. To the family. Yes, to the family. And so, and it was interesting to me that Will Smith referred to August as Og. So that's a familiar nickname, to call someone by some shorthand.
Yeah, I feel like Jaden introduced him, right? Their youngest son.
Right. My understanding is Jaden introduced the family to August. And so, what I took away from it is that both of them were people who were experiencing emotional trauma, were drawn to each other at some point. I think August's main perspective was Will and Jada have talked about their marriage openly, and Will gave his permission, I think, to August was Will indicated to me that he was okay with this. So I think that there's some key things to pull out here. There's 3 relationships that were impacted here. In my mind, everyone's own individual relationship with themselves. So Jada's relationship with herself and her emotional trauma, August's relationship, Will's relationship with himself, and coming to a point where he felt like his marriage, his wife, his partner was over, that relationship was over. Then there was 2 partnerships. There was Will and Jada's partnership as a business entity, which we need to talk about, and then Will and Jada's partnership as a married couple, and then the partnership between August and Jada in terms of achieving his healing together. So there's a lot to unpack.
There is a lot. One thing I do want to say is that is something August said, that he felt like he got Will's permission. On the Red Table Talk, they did clear up that there was no permission to be given by Will.
Right.
So they kind of cleared that part out. The other piece is, okay, so understanding that all the relationships with themselves, the relationships they have amongst each other, individually, as the way you just matched it up. Let's specifically talk about first the relationship between Will and Jada. Like, and I guess I don't necessarily mean like we have to go in detail about it, but just like from what we see, is that something very common. They talked about they were already broken and decided to be through with each other. That sounded like something that happened prior to August even entering the scene. August was just, he entered the scene when there was like a quote unquote break, right? Mm-hmm. That he didn't enter the scene and then it broke. They were already going through something. So whatever they were going through, both of them felt like, Jada said something about she went to go find happiness. Being in a relationship.
Wait. The quote I remember was, she wanted to feel good. And I
feel good. I haven't felt good. So this is what I wanted to get in. Not necessarily just those two, but the things that kind of break up a relationship or create rift in a relationship. Because what she said, I'm sure married couples, people in relationships, they have all gone through a period where they just feel like, I don't feel good, or I'm not happy, or whatever that is.
Yeah. So my thought on that is, I think what we all have to understand is that a lot of people get married for different reasons. For some people, it's because they feel they're in love with their partner. They want to spend the rest of their life with their partner. For some people, it's that and something else. For others, it's this makes good economic sense to me. We're a power couple together. There's any number of reasons why people could get married. And I think that what we all have to think about too is when you enter into the covenant or the agreement of marriage, everyone has their own motivations. So that's one. That's the first thing I want to say. Everyone has their own motivations. The second I want to say is we all come into these marriages and these partnerships as people who have maybe healed some trauma or still have some open wounds, or we all come into situations and relationships, whether that be a partnership or a marriage, with trauma. And something that my husband and I think about a lot together is how is my unresolved trauma impacting our dynamic in our relationship? And we regularly have check-ins and talk with each other about what we're working on individually and together. Because the way that I think about family, for example, or my experiences with family is not going to be the same as his. And that all plays out when you get into those intimate spaces of a marriage. It does. You can't look beyond it. And you start to realize how many assumptions you operate with. Well, my mom and dad always did this. And you just go into a marriage sometime assuming that that's going to be what you all do. And you don't even think about it. Or my mother single, father single, when they were dating, whatever. We bring those things into the relationship that we don't think about. So those are some two things that I want to point out. People get into relationships for different reasons, or partnerships or marriages, and then we all come in with our own stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like I sound like a Yana, but it's true. We all come in with our own stuff.
I agree. I mean, I feel like people do come in with their own stuff. And it also means that, and just touching on the fact that you said that people come into marriages for all different reasons. Some people come in for love, like you said. Some people come in as a good power couple. It looks good. Some people come in for a convenience, right? It's convenient to be married, so I'm not going about life alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes,
and that could change over your lifespan too.
yeah, because you change as a person, right? What I needed when I was a 23-year-old person getting married, I might not need as a 40-year-old person that's still married. So that, and it's okay that these things change. I think both people just kind of got to realize that.
Yeah.
And then, so one looking into these type of things looks at it like, oh my God, they were about to break up. She cheated on him. It sounds like he may have done some things that she didn't like either. They didn't really touch on it, but something about getting back or something. So there are these indiscretions in the marriage or whatever. And it's kind of like, oh my God, what would I do? I would have to leave that person. There's so many traditional things like, okay, that person did something to me. That means we're going to divorce. Or this person did something and I'm not going for it. So, and that right there it shows up different in relationships as well.
Absolutely.
All affairs or all relationships outside the marriage does not always equate to divorce.
They're not all
breaking
equal.
up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I think it's hard to be on the outside looking in and saying, oh, you should have waited until the marriage was dissolved or, whatever to engage in. Anybody could say any of those things. Will and Jada have been married for, at that point, close to 20 years, I believe. Business ventures together. You're talking about a lot of assets, a lot of money, a lot of things that get tied up. And I think a lot of people assume that when you get married, like my money is my money, your money is your money, and we're going to manage it that way. And some people do it that way. But I'm going to tell you, it is not that easy. When you start purchasing property together, when you start owning items together, credit cards together, whatever, there's just a lot of things that become intertwined. And it's not just like your life and your emotions become intertwined, but your assets, your livelihood, your responsibilities become very much intertwined. And it is not easy to separate those types of things. And then you got children involved, right? So there's multiple layers to this. But I want to go back to Jada saying, I wanted to feel good. It had been so long since I felt good. How did you interpret that, Mecca?
I felt like, and she's alluded to this so many times on this show, that she just wasn't happy within herself. And there wasn't anything outside of it. There wasn't anything in the marriage that was making her happy either. Or maybe in her life. So you could look at it two ways. She was already unhappy and she was kind of battling something that she said she had a bunch of deep healing that happened. That could be it. She wasn't happy within the relationship she was in. Maybe she wasn't happy within the life that she was in. Or feel good. That could mean something. And I'm going a little left here. That could also mean sexually.
Yeah.
I really don't know. It could mean when she just kept saying, I just wanted to feel good. You can interpret that any way you want to. You could interpret the way I said the first part of it. The latter part is she wanted to feel good sexually. Not really sure. So, but I would say if I base it off of the way she's talked about the relationship in past Red Table Talks, I would go with the first one. Maybe she just wasn't feeling good because she did talk about how there were days that she was really depressed in the marriage and she cried for several days. I'm sure that was early on in the relationship, I believe. And just them getting married. I mean, she even said walking down the aisle, she didn't want to. She didn't want to. I mean, there's so many different things. I mean, I think they are really good friends. I see them as like really good, like, they call themselves the life partner. So I think that they hold that part very dear and true to themselves. So not that I just wanted to feel good, that's different from the relationship, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think at a superficial level, there's probably plenty of people out there who heard her say, I want to feel good, and interpreted it to mean her and Will were not sexually connecting any longer. I think a lot of people probably interpreted it that way. I think what
Especially
she
after they saw
said,
pictures of August.
well, in my mind, August is still
No, I mean,
relative in
I
age
should say
to
pictures of his
Jada is
bodily
still a
parts.
child.
I
If
should say pictures of his bodily parts, not of him.
I haven't seen any photos of Iris's bodily parts.
That's out
But
there.
I will say, if my teenage son brought a friend to me and was like, "This is my friend," I couldn't even be looking at him like that. I have had when before I was married,
Oh
I had
boy.
no hard time dating anybody younger than me because I was looking at you like you're the same age as my little brother. Honestly, like for real, I couldn't do it. So I don't know how Jada did it, but I couldn't do it.
But you said it. You said it up front. You said she was already hurting, and
Right.
people that are hurting, or maybe they have a self-esteem issue, and this is not something that is a perpetual emotion. It could be at the moment.
Right.
People do things that are not their norm. You know,
Yeah.
she didn't get into the whole discussion on why it happened, what she was attracted to him, anything. I mean, you see people having these, you meet a classmate that you may not be physically attracted to, but maybe this classmate listens to you. Maybe this classmate, there's a connection that you love about this classmate. You start doing things that you would normally never do if they're filling some type of gap that you feel is missing.
I think that's the key. So her saying, I wanted to feel good. I think shortly after that, she said something to the effect of, and it felt, I'll just say, I'm paraphrasing, it felt good to have a hand in healing someone. And maybe I was so focused on healing someone else that I wasn't healing me and parts of me. So I want to get into that because I feel like there's something to be said about tying your self-worth and happiness to something outside of yourself, which I think is what she was getting at too ultimately. So for somebody like me, I can speak from my own personal experience. I think historically I put a lot of my self-worth behind my work, the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wasn't getting positive affirmation and words of positivity in my workplace, then I was not feeling good about my self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering to what extent in Jada's instance, when she's not contributing to the growth or healing or development of someone else, because remember her mother did suffer from addiction, then what is there a part of her that doesn't feel good, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I don't know much about Will. I'm not going to make assumptions about Will and his health, but August was in a more vulnerable state, I'm assuming, than Will was in terms of needing her care and attention in that way.
Right.
So I'm wondering to what extent that was a factor for her.
That's a good point. And she did mention like, I really wanted to focus on helping heal him and his health. And he was just really sick, really, really sick. She used that term. And then she also used a term about like healing other people. So, okay. So if I can do something to make another person happy or well, and I've gotten that instant gratification or the gratification of just knowing I've had a hand in someone else's well-being, then that feels good. So, maybe Will isn't sick. Her kids are doing fine. There was a young boy, a young man that came in the house that needed some type of care, and maybe the backgrounds of August and Jada were relatable to one another at some point in their lifetime.
Right.
And so she felt like, oh, I know this spirit. Let me dive in. And as she dove in to help, she got into this
entanglement.
And
I do think there's a reason why she used that word. I mean, I'm not saying that is an accurate description from the outside looking in, right? Which is why Will was like, I think you need to say that this was a relationship.
Right.
But I think to her, it was an entanglement. It started with one thing and she got caught up and entangled in other aspects of August and her dynamic with August, for sure. And with herself, ultimately.
It's one of those things that when we start getting mature about relationships, And that takes a lot of maturity. And she said it best. It takes a lot of maturity. It does take some healing. It takes some, and even if he was like, well, heal from what? Heal from what? Because that's another big thing. We throw these terms around like, oh, I need to heal. I needed some deep healing. What does that mean?
What does that mean? I know. I've been thinking that myself.
Like, and we given examples, even if there's no specific answer on what that means. That means that when you get into an argument with your romantic partner, a friend, or a coworker, it doesn't end with the relationship being dissolved.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it may deserve to be dissolved for both people's health, but it doesn't always mean that. It's a work through type of situation. And that being in a point where you can actually do that, work through it and not dissolve the relationship is quote unquote a healing moment.
Right.
You don't just like, if you have a whole bag of apples and one is bad, are you going to throw out the whole bag or just take out that one bag of that one apple out of the bag?
Yeah. And then I think there's something to be said about, holding ourselves accountable to sticking things out and not giving up. I mean, I said this when we were talking about Molly and Issa's friendship on Insecure.
Ooh, yes,
sometimes we're quick to say, I think personally for me, sometimes we're too quick to say, I've outgrown this friendship, or I'm on another level, or I'm in another space. And we don't have enough grace to allow our friends to go through their transition while we're going through our transition and somehow coming back together. And I absolutely think that that's true in a marriage or a partnership as well. Now, I'm not saying like, listen, if you're experiencing any kind of abuse, that's not what we're talking about here.
Right. If there's some physical hands being laid, mental abuse, verbal abuse, all of the
emotional, spiritual, any kind of abuse, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about you and your partner not figuring out how to communicate with each other, passing each other in the night, not connecting, having a hard time getting to a point of connection. What we have found to be true in talking with each other in our marriage is we have these kind of like scheduled check-ins where we say like, are we feeling connected? Hey, I'm not feeling so connected to you right now. I don't know what's going on at work with you, and you're a whole person, and I'm married to you as a whole person. So maybe because we locked up in the house together, I know what's going on with you at home, but I don't know what you're facing when you're talking to your colleagues or your clients or whatever. And so it's all for us. It's all about connection with each other. And I think everybody has to figure out what it is for them and their partner. It could be connection, it could be trust, it could be any number of variables. So I will say one open relationship that an interview about an open relationship that stayed in mind for me, and I never really forgot about it, was the rapper Jadena. Are you familiar with him?
Oh yeah, he's from Kentucky, right?
I don't know if he's from Kentucky. I thought he was from California, because I think he's from California. But regardless, Jadena was doing an interview on The Breakfast Club. And you may remember him. He was on Insecure at some point. And I think he went to college with Issa Rae, actually.
Wait, he's a performer, right?
Yes, he's a rapper.
Classic man.
That is him.
Okay.
That is him. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So Jadena was doing an interview on The Breakfast Club, and he was talking about his relationship and the way that he approaches relationship. And I could be wrong, but from what I remember, he defined his relationship as an open relationship. And the way that he described it to me was that he was in this open relationship with a woman, and they had an agreement that when they spent time together, they were together.
Okay.
When she was not with him, whatever she did in her own time, not with him, was not his concern. And so I think...
What? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know, right? But I think the main point was, he said it takes a certain kind of person and a certain kind of strength to truly engage in that in its truest form.
Yeah.
Because he said there would be times where it killed his soul to know that she left him, or would finish a night with him and be with that other person A few hours later, the next day.
So were they in a relationship? Like, okay, what does that mean? We're in a relationship. Like,
I don't really know if I remember the details of all that, but I do remember that this was like a long-standing relationship that he had with this woman, and it was understood to be open. And he said it killed him to know that he would have to share her attention or affections with someone else when he really sat there and thought about it.
so that's interesting. So I wonder who agreed for it to be an open relationship.
I think so. I'm pretty sure Charlemagne asked him this question because Charlemagne would ask those types of questions. But I think that it was something that, from what I remember, they both were like, okay, this is, if we're going to be together, this is how it has to be. I think maybe she had open relationships previously, or had been a part of open relationships previously. And I think Jadena was open to that. And he said it took a certain level of strength that not everybody can have or have with everyone.
So they say it's not for the weak at.
Have you ever been a part of or around an open relationship, Mecca?
I have never been a part of a open relationship, especially now that I'm going to say I've never played a role in an open relationship. That doesn't mean the other person didn't think they would.
That's always sadly the truth.
I was never a part of an open relationship, but
Intentionally.
yeah, like, wait, what? No, I've never been a part of one. Have I ever been around one? Ooh, this is a good question because sometimes you don't even know.
Sometimes you don't know.
No. I have never. Oh, let me think about this. This is a good question. I don't think I have ever been around one, but at the same time, you don't know because just because two people are in an open relationship does not always mean that they're always on a prowl looking for someone to add to their relationship or for the other person to be. It just means that so no, to answer your question, I've never been in an open relationship. And as far as I know, I don't know any couples, personally. I know couples that they wouldn't call it an open relationship because they both quote unquote do their own thing and they think the other person doesn't know.
Oh.
So do you call that an open relationship?
No, I think it has
That's
to be
that's the
open
other
in both
thing. It
directions.
has to be open in both directions. Like both people gotta be like, yo, it's cool. Like we do this thing. Not one person saying, yeah, I'm doing my
So
own.
the operational definition of an open relationship, y'all, for us is it's open in both directions.
In both directions, both people know that it's open and grace. We both know that it's okay that we are seeing or having relations with other people. It's not something we're hiding from one another.
Right.
So yeah, I guess so. But I have, coincidentally, I do know people that partake in polyamorous relationships.
Okay.
And that's really, I've seen, I guess I didn't realize how common it was until recently. I mean, I've heard about it, but I feel like there's more people than not, and I'm not saying everybody is, there's more people than not that actually participate in those relationships. And they kind of find it a sense of freedom from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
A polyamorous relationship, if I'm saying this correctly, I'm not an expert on all the various types, but from my understanding, it's a couple that are in a relationship that have added on another individual to be in the relationship with them. And all three of them are all in a relationship. So there's no one, there's not a, it's not a couple almost. It's like a throuple.
Right.
Yes, a throuple.
Okay. Okay.
Because it's not just me and Ashley in a relationship. It's me, Ashley, and this third person. All
Yeah.
three of us are in this relationship.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I understand it. And for some people, it brings a little bit of layers and texture to their current relationship, or maybe they've been together for a very long time and they want to add, sometimes people decide to have kids to add a different dynamic to their relationship. And sometimes people decide to bring in another person to add a dynamic to their relationship.
I think that's the truth, though.
And then,
That's true.
right.
That's true.
And then the individual that is getting into that already, in place relationship is also looking for a community. They're looking for friendships. They're looking for, you know, a relationship. And this is not determined on the gender of the person either.
You heard it out of Mecca's mouth. You done do what she said.
Thank you for joining us as we dive through this whole relationship journey. I don't know. It's fun. We'd love to hear from you. Like, we're going to post a little bit on our Instagram. So tell us what you guys think.
Drop us a note.
All right. Bye. Catch us next time on Incense and Whiskey.
In the meantime, take a breath, have a sip.